Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and, as you all know, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek singularity. There's a couple of things, that little orders of business. First of all, I got a package in the mail. Unexpected but wonderful, from our own Fernando Barrero. That's right. He sent me this. The new version, the new hardcover from DK, the Marvel Encyclopedia. Not DC, but DK. They make lots of great, like the visual recognition books for Star Wars and all that. This is a hefty tome. It's very nice. I don't know what I did to be the recipient of this, but Fernando, thank you. This is a great book. This was a very unexpected. It's very funny when I get packages in the mail from like Amazon. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? I didn't order this. And then I open the box and it's wrapped. It was a wrapped gift. Had a card with it. Fernando, thank you. Thank you for that. It's fantastic. It's like it's Christmas every day in this place. The next thing I want to talk about is today. There are two days of remembrance happening today. The first of these that I want to discuss is NASA's Day of Remembrance. 17 astronauts have been lost in our space pursuits over the years of our space program, the decades. So today marks the 51st, no wait, would it be 51st? 55th, hang on. NASA will pause today on January 27th to remember the lives lost in the pursuit of space exploration during the agency's annual Day of Remembrance. This year's edition coincides with the 55th anniversary of the Apollo 1 fire of January 27th, 1967. The following 6 days include two other somber anniversaries: the Challenger shuttle disaster of January 28th, 1986, and the Columbia shuttle accident of February 1st, 2003. The agency plans several live stream events and various center commemorations, along with a panel discussion about safety lessons learned at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we missed that. The panel will air live on NASA television. NASA's Day of Remembrance is an opportunity to honor members of the NASA family who lost their lives in our shared endeavor to advance exploration and the discovery for the good of all humanity, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said in a statement. Every day we have an opportunity to further uplift the legacies of those who gave their lives in pursuit of discovery by taking the next giant leap, meeting every challenge head-on as they did, and in doing so, we must never forget the lessons learned from each tragedy and embrace our core value of safety. The Apollo 1 fire killed NASA astronauts Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White during a launch pad test. The source of the fire was never traced with confidence, but aspects contributing to the problem included poor wiring and an oxygen-rich atmosphere. The astronauts were doing a ground dress rehearsal for the first crewed launch of the Apollo program, an Earth-orbiting mission intended to prepare the systems for future missions to the moon. The Challenger explosion killed 7 astronauts a little over 2 minutes after launch. The technical cause was primarily due to a fault in a booster joint known as an O-ring. The crew included Commander Francis Dick Scobie, pilot Mike Smith, mission specialists Judy Resnick, Ellison Onizuka, and Ron McNair, and payload specialists Greg Jarvis and Krista McAuliffe, who was set to be the first teacher in space. The Columbia space shuttle broke apart during re-entry due to wing damage sustained by foam falling off a piece of the launch system. The damage affected the shuttle's heat shield. Killed in that tragedy were Commander Rick Husband, Commander Pilot William McCool, Payload Commander Michael Anderson, Mission Specialists David Brown, Kalpana Chawla, and Laurel Clark, and Ilan Ramon, a payload specialist from the Israel. Maybe it's Ilan. Ilan Ramon, a payload specialist from the Israeli Space Agency. So I figured it was a good thing. You can read the article. Here's the space.com article. I will put it into the chat. So here it is. Now, the other day that we remember today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And as many of you know, I was an adoptee. Well, first of all, I should say today is the 21st anniversary of the death of my biological mother, Linda Rungo, who gave birth to me as a 17-year-old and put me up for adoption. So I will say that this next day, obviously, is a day that is certainly near and dear to me because I exist and I was able to meet my biological mother before she passed away, and we were able to get to know each other for about 5 years. So I want to thank Linda Rungo for giving birth to me, and it's now been 21 years since she passed. But I figured it's always good to remember that, because how many people know how close they came to never existing? I can actually say that I do. I actually know the answer to that. Let me tell you, it was this close. So, but the third thing I want to talk about is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Obviously, it is a time we remember the genocide, not just of the Jews, but of the 12 million people that were killed in concentration camps, and about the 20 million Russians that were slaughtered in the war, and also however many people lost their lives in Europe, tens of millions of more people. But Holocaust Remembrance Day is specifically about the Jews. They were targeted. 6 million were killed in concentration camps, and there are less than, I think, 18 million Jews left on the planet Earth right now. So I was raised in the Jewish faith. My family, the Schoenfeld-Gardner Foundation, we're the Schoenfeld side. We actually built a synagogue in Seattle at Temple D. Hirsch Sinai. It's the Schoenfeld-Gardner Foundation. Well, it's a chapel. We built a chapel there. And I had to go to religion school and was bar mitzvahed and learned Hebrew and all of that. So my whole life when I was younger, I heard the experiences of many Holocaust survivors firsthand, people that, way too many people actually, that I met that had green number tattoos on their wrists. And it's something, I mean, it might seem cliche now with the Shoah Foundation and movies like Schindler's List, or even the great TV miniseries Holocaust, but it is something we should never forget. And it wasn't that long ago, actually, that it happened. I mean, there's a lot of people today that still deny it happened. But see, here the thing was, the Germans were so meticulous in their record keeping. You can figure out what happened to just about everybody who was put to death in Nazi concentration camps. So it's that it happened at all, that anyone would deny it, is monstrous to me. But anyway, I wanted to read this article about the great Art Spiegelman's graphic novel, Mouse. Now, for those of you who don't know or have never heard of Mouse, Mouse is a graphic novel that was written by Art Spiegelman that is based on the experiences of his own father in the Holocaust. And in the book, it is the mice that are the Jews and cats are Nazis. And this is a Pulitzer-Prize winning graphic novel. It's one of the seminal graphic works of the 20th century, and it is essential reading to anyone, believe it or not. You know, maybe for a day or two, put away your Marvel and DC and Boom Studios and Dark Horse, Image, whatever your favorite comics are, put those aside and give Mouse a read, because it's one of the great comic books, graphic works of the 20th century. Well, it has been banned in Tennessee. A graphic novel about the Holocaust has been banned in Tennessee. I probably shouldn't be surprised by this, but the United States is currently in the process of devolving, and I don't quite understand it. While the rest of the world embraces things like science and methodology, we here in America somehow have an aversion to basic truths. And more than that, we want to believe that everybody has their own truth. The problem with this is that ultimately, in the long run, we're going to get our asses kicked. We already are getting our asses kicked. Because we used to understand, and one of the great things, I mean, it's not all bad, people. The James Webb Telescope, which had 1,000 points of failure, and I suppose it still does, but the James Webb Telescope is at the L2 Lagrange point where it was supposed to be in its month-long journey, and this telescope could bring us more information about the universe we've lived in than anything previously constructed by man. And it's going to take about 3 more months to calibrate, so it's not all bad. Our quest for the truth continues apace here in the United States, but it seems like we as Americans are fracturing, I believe, because it's not just that we all hate each other for whatever reason, but we've forgotten what truth is and means. When everybody has their own truths, which aren't necessarily the truth, we are lost. And the very basis of our democracy, of our educational system, if we can't agree on basic truths, that truth itself is somehow can be we have a problem. But anyway, the mouse has been banned. And I wanted to show this. This is an article from the New York Times. This was published, I believe, today. And it was published at 12:40 p.m. our time. School board in Tennessee bans teaching of Holocaust novel Mouse. The board voted unanimously to remove the Pulitzer-Prize winning graphic novel from classrooms because it contained swear words, according to minutes from the meeting. Like, really, what the fuck? Shit, man, are you fucking kidding me? Swear words? This is by Jenny Gross. A school board in Tennessee voted unanimously this month to ban Mouse, a Pulitzer-Prize winning graphic novel about the Holocaust, from being taught in its classrooms because it contains material that board members said was inappropriate for students. According to minutes of its meeting, the 10-person board in McMinn County, Tennessee, voted on January 10th to remove the book from the 8th grade curriculum. Members of the board said the book, which portrays Jews as mice and Nazis as cats in recounting the author's parents' experience during the Holocaust, contained inappropriate curse words and a depiction of a naked character. There is some rough, objectionable language in this book, said Lee Parkinson, the director of schools for McMinn County in eastern Tennessee, according to minutes of the meeting. I got news for you, Lee Parkinson. There's some rough stuff that happened to human beings during the Holocaust, and objectionable language and nudity was the least of those things. This book is about human beings being carted off and put to death. And you're worried about language and depictions of nudity. Have you ever seen the photographs of hundreds of people marched naked into showers where they were put to death with Zyklon B gas? Have you seen pictures of those bodies that American soldiers came across when they liberated some of those camps? Soldiers, some of them, just a few years out of the 8th grade. And this is going on in our country right now. You know what's objectionable? What's objectionable is we live in a world where kids walk into schools with guns and gun down other kids in the 8th fucking grade. And you're worried about language, and you're worried about depictions of nudity. By the way, I got news for you. Guess what? We're all nude. And what is objectionable about that? What's objectionable is you, motherfucker. You're objectionable. And to sit there and say that we can't talk about the Holocaust. I do not understand this. Why is it that we are infantilized to the point where we can't discuss history? We can't talk about slavery. We can't talk about the legacy of slavery. We can't talk about what actually happened to people that were enslaved, and not just blacks that were brought over here from Africa, but what's been going on for thousands of years of human history, what's going on right now around the world. Slavery is not some weird American phenomenon that we created, and yet nobody can seem to talk about slavery in a realistic manner anymore. Same way you can't talk about the Holocaust. You're going to ban a graphic novel that, if anything, presents the Holocaust in a way that is easily understood by everyone. Art Spiegelman, the author of Mouse, told NBC that he was baffled by the decision. It's leaving me with my jaw open. Like what? He said in the interview on Wednesday, the day before Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is today. Mr. Spiegelman published the first volume of the book in 1986 and the second in 1991, and the graphic novel received a special Pulitzer in 1992. Mr. Spiegelman's parents survived Auschwitz. His mother died by suicide when Mr. Spiegelman was 20. The board's vote was reported on by a local news outlet, the Tennessee Holler, on Wednesday. The decision comes as the Antidefamation League and others have warned of a recent rise in anti-Semitic incidents amid a broader movement to ban books that address certain ideas about race, as well as those that address sex and LGBTQ issues. In Virginia, the Spotsylvania County Board voted unanimously last year to have books with sexually explicit material removed from school library shelves. In York County, Pennsylvania, teachers and students protested against and overturned a ban on a selection of books told from the perspective of gay, black, and Latino children. And Republican lawmakers in Texas have pushed to reframe history lessons and play down references to slavery and anti-Mexican discrimination. During the McMinn County Board's discussion of Mouse, multiple board members discussed redacting profanity, or said they did not object to teaching the history of the Holocaust. One of the board members, Mike Cochran, said he objected to the language and the depiction of nudity. We don't need this stuff to teach kids history, he said, according to the minutes. We can teach them history, and we can teach them graphic history. We can tell them exactly what happened, but we don't need all the nakedness and all the other stuff. Yes, Mr. Cochran, you do, because that's what happened. I'm sorry if your delicate sensibilities don't understand that people were marched naked into showers and murdered. But I'm telling you, what you are doing is a disservice to your children, to the people of your community, and to our own history. This idea that we have to whitewash how horrible human beings have been doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't get it. We need to know more, not less. We need to understand the truth about what happened, what other human beings are actually capable of doing to one another. This idea that we're going to walk around blissfully unaware of what really goes on every single day. You look at this country and we are so deeply mired in some weird kind of hypocrisy. We want to pretend that none of this is going on in the world. Nobody wants to deal with what's actually happening, and I don't understand why. Why are we so afraid of our own history? Why are we so afraid of who we are? I mean, if anything, we should embrace this kind of history so we don't do it again. And to read that something like Mouse is going to get banned, an incredibly important book. I mean, when I read it for the first time, I was in my first year of college. I guess that means it's okay that I knew those things were happening. But I was taught in religion school on Sunday mornings about the Holocaust from people that were in concentration camps. And you know what? My parents never said, well, I just don't think that these people should be speaking about what actually happened to them at the hands of other people. This is not something that we should soft pedal ever. And the further we get away from the actual events of World War II, the worse it becomes. And I don't understand it. Mr. Cochran and other board members did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Thursday. Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat of Tennessee and the state's first Jewish congressman, said on Thursday that censoring books about the Holocaust or about slavery and lynchings or other atrocities was a way to purge one's understanding of the horrors of what humanity is capable of. It is depressing to see this happen anywhere in the country. And when it comes to censoring an easy way to reach children and teach them about the Holocaust, it is particularly disturbing, Mr. Cohen said in an interview. The U.S. Holocaust Museum said in a statement on Twitter that using books like Maus to teach students about the Holocaust can inspire students to think critically about the past and their own roles and responsibilities today. The Holocaust Museum tweeted, Maus has played a vital role in educating about the Holocaust through sharing detailed and personal experiences of victims and survivors. On the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, that was yesterday, today is actually Holocaust Remembrance Day, it is more important than ever for students to learn this history. It was unclear what book would replace Maus in the curriculum. At one point during the board meeting, one of the members, Rob Shamblin seems like a good last name for him, asked what other books the school would have to ban if it banned one on the basis of foul language. Classic books on elementary school reading lists, such as Bridge to Terabithia, The Whipping Boy, and To Kill a Mockingbird, also included foul language, a school principal said. That falls under another topic for another day, Chairman Sharon Brown said. Does it? Let's take a look at what some of these comments are. I wonder if I can. Let's just get over here and. Yeah, here we go. I love this. Reminds me of a line from Apocalypse Now, says Blue Bayou. We train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't let them to write fire truck on their airplanes because it's obscene. Actually, that's not the right quote, but you get the idea, says Blue Bayou. A. Stanton says, my father, a survivor of Buchenwald and an avid reader of newspapers, began every day of my childhood by scanning the Times, the Herald Tribune, and the Wall Street Journal for news of interest to him, to which he always applied the same centuries-old question. Is today's news good news for the Jews? Although asking that old question about Jews seemed to have gone a bit out of style among Jews in recent years, I, as the proud son of a very excellent father, still abide by it now and venture to predict that history will end up judging President Biden as far better news for the Jews than Donald Trump and his followers. Susan says, as if To Kill a Mockingbird has not been extracted from many schools by the left. It's true. H. Clark says, apparently people don't take their clothes off in Tennessee. Curious, hoping for better. I've not read the book, but from the comments it seems like the Maus is stripped by the Nazis, most likely a scene of humiliation and abuse. That is not sexual. That uncomfortable feeling is a good thing because it is wrong, and that's the point. Howard G. says the elephant in the room is, of course, the best way to get young, curious, and interested minds to read a provocative book is by telling them they're not allowed to read it. I can see lots of flashlights under the bed in McMinn County after bedtime. And, of course, Spiral Turtle says, I hope so. Bradford says, it would be easy to say only in the South could this happen, but the reality of it is this could happen anywhere. It is through art that hopefully we can teach such lessons and remind ourselves of horrible events so that we are not doomed to repeat them. Would this same school board also ban Schindler's List because of profanity and nudity, but then allow Birth of a Nation to be deemed acceptable because it contains no profane language or nudity? Real profanity is in the horrible actions justified by prejudices and supremacist beliefs. Should theatrical productions of The Diary of Anne Frank also be banned? Why wasn't the 1921 massacre of Tulsa never covered in American history classes or even discussed until fairly recently? That the banning of this book happened on the eve of the Holocaust Remembrance Day speaks to a major flaw in America's moral character. Maus is a book that could fit into any American school curriculum. Just ask Philip Roth's novel The Plot Against America could be taught in any college or university. I thought we fought a war against such values. And one reader goes on to say, have they heard of the internet? This is the thing. I've never understood this idea that why should we obfuscate the truth? Why not, tell people what happened? What are they trying to protect children from? We live in a world where children go to school and could get gunned down any day of the week by some crazy idiot with a gun. It's happening. It's happened way too many times. And yet we're worried about a graphic novel that depicts nudity and bad language? It's very weird. And I don't understand where we are as a country. And normally I stay positive on this show, but I see this happening more and more. I see the intellectual rigor that we used to bring to subjects in this country that I grew up with in schools being slowly chipped away. I mean, at the end of the day, are Americans going to know anything? This isn't happening in other places around the world, especially Western countries. This is happening here, and it's happening now. And it's undermining the very fabric of our education. Like I have always said, why we do not couch our national security debate in health and education, I will never know. We need a smart, healthy population if we're ever going to restore our luster on the world stage. That means we need to figure out ways to pay for education. If we have areas where public education sucks and we don't have great teaching, what we need and what we have to have is we have to have I don't know, people are banging on the garage door. We have to have great education and we have to have great health care. That is the only way that we're going to maintain our supremacy of any kind. Not the white supremacy kind. I mean the supremacy on the world stage. We need smart, healthy people to lead the way because this kind of shit ain't going to fly. And it's not going to help us accomplish anything. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Not a long subject. Let's get to some letters and talk about some fun stuff, shall we? This first letter comes to us from Electron Star Collapse. Welcome, Electron Star Collapse, a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Greetings, Rob and the PGS. With the recent inquisition of the Activision acquisition, I thought it would be interesting to look into the history of the company. For those who don't realize, Activision holds an important place in gaming history as the first company to develop third-party games. However, it's quite a long story to be told, so I'll try and simplify it some and break it apart in general. The story of Activision actually begins at Atari. There are a lot of stories about the work culture within Atari during the 1970s, but the consensus points to a rather casual working environment under the leadership of Nolan Bushnell. This work environment was going to clash with other business leaders in the following years. Atari was originally built for the production of arcade cabinets, with their first test and runaway success being Pong in 1972. This operation expanded not only to include more arcade titles, but to also release home versions of these games. The home versions were single game affairs, taking up a lot of space if grouped with many other single game home units. This led to the desire to create a modern console game system which could read information from an external source. The console was not a new idea. Magnavox released the Odyssey in the same year as Pong, but it's not like modern consoles. Game cards would change the behavior of the system so that other games could be played, but there was no inherent data actually stored, just printed circuits acting as switches. The first console in the common sense didn't come until 1976, with Fairchild Camera and Instruments Video Entertainment System, later rebranded as the Channel F. This system had a microprocessor and read data through ROM cartridges. Many developers of the Channel F left Fairchild in order to help Atari bring their own system to market, which borrowed heavily in design. Even the name of Atari's system would initially be the Video Computer System, or VCS, which prompted the name change for the Channel F. The VCS itself would undergo a name change years later to the probably more well-known Atari 2600. Unfortunately for Nolan Bushnell, the VCS required more money than Atari had to bring the system to market. The number of financial problems faced Atari in '74, and Magnavox sued Atari over Pong's similarity to the tennis game on the Odyssey system. Outside investments were already brought into the company, but if the VCS were to hit stores, Atari would need to sell to a larger company. Warner Communications purchased Atari in 1976 and led to the release of the VCS in 1977. While the original series of titles released for the VCS were ports of arcade games, Atari started experimenting with board games on the system and other genres that were harder to market. Warner brought in Ray Kazar to help market the system and the games. Leading into the 1978 holiday season, Nolan Bushnell expressed fear that Kazar directed Atari to overproduce consoles and showed his concern to Warner that the programmers were being incorrectly treated as engineers and not creative artists. Bushnell was removed from his position as CEO of Atari, with Kazar taking over. Bushnell was offered the opportunity to stay with the company under a new position but left Atari altogether. With a change in management, employees of the more laid-back Atari were now at odds with the more business-minded Warner. Under Kazar, programmers felt undercompensated for their work and frustrated that they weren't credited either. Kazar, on the other hand, felt that the employees of Atari were a bunch of spoiled brats and prima donnas. The divide in the company brought us one of gaming's earliest known Easter eggs, where Warren Robinett hid his personal credit in a secret room of the 1980 game Adventure. By the way, I knew how to get in that secret room. I still remember how to even today. However, there were bigger changes happening from the programmer base. Several programmers had discussed amongst themselves the idea of forming their own company to develop games, and could no longer be held under Warner's oppressive stranglehold. Because they couldn't credit themselves in their games, they also couldn't use those games to promote their business portfolio at other companies. So, in 1979, 4 programmers took a chance. David Crane, Larry Kaplan, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead left Atari to pursue their own vision. An Activision. These 4 out of the 35 programmers created games within Atari that accounted for 60% of sales, and they were walking out the door taking their talent with them. I will stop here to preserve the length of the letter. I'll continue later with the story of Activision in the 80s, their struggles through litigation and North American video game crash, their successes with games such as Pitfall, and of course, their historical importance of being the very first developer of software as a third-party company. Don't let the stars collapse on you. That comes from Electron Star Collapse. Well, thanks for that. I have to say that still, as everyone who watches this channel knows, my favorite video game of all time, not when I say all time, probably the one I was the most obsessed by was their remake, Activision's remake of Battlezone in 1998. For those of you who want to know, yes, I see the emulation. It's a lot of fun. I still love that game. This next letter is a short one, comes from Jamie Wright. Hi, Rob. I would like to thank you for your show, as it got me into film. And as of yesterday, I have received an unconditional offer from my uni of choice. Well, congratulations. That's great. Now, when you say uni, an unconditional offer, I would assume, are you in the UK? Because we don't say really uni in the United States unless it's, we say university, but uni of choice. Congratulations. That's huge. Jamie goes on to say, also, I have recently bought the BFI player, or BFI, is that a player? Oh, BFI player. It is, I guess, because it has access to films from Truffaut, Bergman, Godard, Kurosawa, Fritz Lang, and many others. And I was wondering if you could recommend some of their best films that I should watch. Ooh. Well, obviously, with Kurosawa, I would look at Rashomon, Seven Samurai, The Hidden Fortress, where you'll see a lot from Star Wars. But there's a couple other ones. Ikiru, which has just been remade with Bill Nye in the lead role. And High and Low, which I recently watched. I thought High and Low was, I owned it on Laserdisc. I watched that again. I thought that was great. Fritz Lang, watch M in Metropolis, absolutely. Truffaut, I would watch all the Antoine Doinel, his autobiographical movies he made across the years, beginning with like the 400 Blows. And Godard, A Band Apart, things like that. Feminine, Masculine, those kind of things. Yeah, there's so many to look at. But congratulations on getting into uni. Joe from Montreal writes in and says, hey, Rob, I just saw that the new Spider-Man has hit the ranks of one of the highest domestic grossers of all time. Seeing the company that it is in, along with Jurassic World and Endgame, it makes me remember when films like The Godfather and The Exorcist were the highest grossing films of all time. Will we ever get films like that again, making the same kind of coin? I'm not sure. Joe from Montreal. Well, Joe from Montreal, I would say this. I would say, and this might be unpopular, everyone knows I love the MCU. I love flights of fancy. I love escapist entertainment. I have my whole life. But on the other hand, like our previous letter writer, Jamie Wright, I also grew up watching. Oh, I forgot to mention Bergman, Ingmar Bergman. Great, The Virgin Spring, Seventh Seal. I'm thinking old Bergman, but Cries and Whispers, Persona. God, there's so many Bergman movies that are great. Just watch them all. As a matter of fact, you should do that with all these directors. But anyway, our film going, it's funny, I look at this, I love hearing that Jamie Wright, who you just got into uni, is interested in watching these movies. I would also ask you to watch movies like my beloved Michelangelo Antonioni's Ennui trilogy, La Notte, La Ventura, and The Eclipse. I always tell people to watch that. I think only one person ever did, but I really like them. And also Fellini. There's so many great Fellini movies to watch, but watch them all. But I would say that to answer Joe's question, the problem is, and I've often said this, I don't even think a lot of us have the ability to even watch movies like this anymore. Because, and this is when Martin Scorsese talks about, well, comic book movies aren't cinema. I don't think he really means it. Obviously they are cinema, and escapist entertainment is great. But Martin Scorsese did not fall in love with movies. Movies are an art form like anything else. And I think it used to be a great, interesting collision of art and commerce. But the thing is, our general populations, I think, used to have a more well-rounded classical education in terms of understanding art history itself, things about our culture. We don't even teach civics anymore. And there was a base understanding of the culture that we lived in and, cultures we didn't live in. These films are far more like if you look at the, you know what we are missing in movies today? That I look at this list: Truffaut, Bergman, Godard, Kurosawa, Fritz Lang, Antonioni, Fellini. What those movies had in them that we don't have much of anymore is existentialism. What does it mean to be a human being? And you can say that, well, when Spider-Man's, they all team up, and you've got Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tom Holland Spider-Man, and they talk about they're like brothers. I don't want to take away from that. But I would ask any of you to watch a movie like Last Year at Marion Bad. Put it on. Try watching that movie and tell me what it's about. I don't think if you were to watch that movie and, you put it up against any Marvel film, it would be, if all you know is Marvel movies and Jurassic Park and Star Wars and Back to the Future and whatever, I love all those movies. But I don't find myself returning to those movies over and over and over again because I enjoy watching those movies. I enjoy the spectacle of it all. But there's not a lot there for me as an adult for repeat viewing. There's not a lot of meditation and contemplation of the human existence. And I think a lot of my movies that I own, I have a vast collection of foreign cinema. One of my favorite directors is Wong Kar-wai. And if you watch his movies, whether it's Days of Being Wild, or you watch Happy Together, or you watch Fallen Angels, or you watch even The Grand Master, or In the Mood for Love, watch any of his films. A lot of them, especially his modern urban. In the Mood for Love is an incredibly gorgeous movie about longing and yearning between two people that can't even really act on one another because or what their feelings are, because the culture that they live in. And I'll tell you something, you'll learn more about what it means to love in a movie like In the Mood for Love than a lot of the movies you would be watching today about romance. And I think that's what's missing. And that's what Martin Scorsese is saying, is that with all of these, the studios used to release, it's funny, you ask about movies, Joe, The Godfather and The Exorcist. The Godfather was a huge Paramount release, and The Exorcist was a huge Warner Brothers release, both of them based on novels. In the case of The Godfather, Paramount actually developed the book along with Mario Puzo. And The Exorcist, of course, was written by a Jesuit student. William Peter Blatty. And are we ever going to get those kinds of movies again? I don't know. I don't think the movie-going audience today would even... I mean, sit still. The Godfather's going to get re-released next year. There's going to be, or next month, and there's going to be a lot of people who see The Godfather for the first time this year. And Rob, it's kind of slow. Is it? Is it slow? No, it has existentialism in it, contemplative nature of existence. What's going on in this movie? Who are we? What do we want to be? I think that's what's missing from movies, and that's, sometimes it's not in the motion of the image. It's about the stillness of an image that's actually moving. Somebody standing looking into a brook or throwing rocks into the water and watching the water ripple outward. And what does that mean? What does a gaze like that mean? I mean, look, I think that what we're missing, what a lot of people are missing, is a well-balanced diet of different kinds of movies. When I was growing up, I'd watch anything. I'd watch anything from any country. I went to the Seattle Film Festival. I'd get a pass. I would sit there. I'd watch 5 movies on a Saturday from all over the world, not knowing what you'd read a couple of line description of what the movie was. I'd be like, okay. There was no internet. I had no idea what I was going to see. And I learned and saw and experienced things I haven't seen since. Seeing a smorgasbord of movies from around the world, man, I'll tell you, it was an education. And anybody who's not participating in that anymore is really doing themselves a disservice. But anyway, now this is kind of interesting. A guy named Robert writes in and asks me if I see any talent in this script. And normally I wouldn't do this, but it's only 2 pages. And it's not very long. Star Wars New Order. I assume this is supposed to be the opening crawl. The Jedi Order is no more. Who will train the next generation of Force users in the ways of the light side of the Force? Someone will need to step up soon, or the rise of a new Sith will be inevitable. Well, I don't think that's necessarily bad, but it's not a good opening crawl. Because it's asking questions, first of all, where the opening crawl should be statements of fact. It should tell us where we're at, what's going on, what's happening. Who will train the next generation of Force users in the ways of the light side of the Force? Don't know. And your opening crawl is supposed to give us facts and tell us where we're at. Now, the next thing that you've written is interior spaceship corridor, indeterminate. In the vastness of space, a lone spacecraft hovers amongst the stars. Okay, first of all, you've written, just as a point of order, you've written interior spaceship corridor, and then your description goes on to say, in the vastness of space, a lone spacecraft hovers amongst the stars. First of all, that should start out with exterior. It shouldn't say interior. And I would say this. In your description, what you are doing when you are writing a screenplay, and this is in general when you're writing any kind of a script, is you are painting an image in the viewer's minds through your words. You want to set up a thing. So whatever you're writing down, the reader, and hopefully the director or producer, can see exactly what you mean. In the vastness of space, a lone spacecraft hovers amongst the stars. Okay, first of all, that's too general. That doesn't paint enough of a picture. And in the vastness of space, I mean, okay, is there planets nearby? Hovers amongst the stars. Okay, well, that would assume first of all, what kind of a spacecraft is it? How big is it? Is it close to a star? I mean, hovers amongst the stars. It's not really hovering up. It's in space and there's stars way behind you. You've got to explain in graphic fashion what people see. So in the vastness of space is not specific enough. Where in the vastness of space? Give us something. Tell us, is it by a nebula? Is it by a planet? Give us a visual. When you say in the vastness of space, I just see a generic empty starfield. Not empty, but a starfield with stars twinkling in the background. Give me something more. Give me a fiery nebula or the shocking magenta of a alien planet. Give me something. Give me an image that's indelible. And when you say a lone spacecraft, how big is that spacecraft? Is it a lone capital ship? Is it a lone snub fighter? What is it? And is it hovering because it's not working? Are the engines off? Is it cruising? Is it standing still? You got to make it as specific as possible. Paint images with your words. The horizon is black for as far as the eye can see. Okay, first of all, there is no horizon in space. It's all black. A horizon is something that you need somewhere that the horizon is first. The horizon is black for as far as the eye can see. In the vastness of space, aboard. Okay, so first of all, that should come under your exterior. Then you go to interior spaceship corridor. Aboard the ship, remnants of the rebel fleet are on board prepping for their next mission. One rebel leader in particular, scout leader Lance Wayfinder. Okay. Aboard the ship, remnants of the rebel fleet are on board prepping for their next mission. Remnants of the rebel fleet. When you say rebel fleet, I know what you mean, but fleet, that's a fleet of ships. It's all you got to figure out. You have to say, tell us what are they looking like? Are they, when they say on board prepping for the next mission, that could be anything in general. You got to tell us, how are they prepping? Where are they prepping? What's going on? Are they running to and fro? Is there chaos? Give me all that. One rebel leader in particular is scout leader Lance Wayfinder. Okay, what does he look like? What's he wearing? What's the expression on his face? What can we gain from him? You know what? I'll read something to you that I've written, that I'm writing, and maybe that will. I think I've read this before, but I'm going to read it for you right now because why not? I can. It's my show. I can do whatever I want, right? I'm going to read you just the first. I gotta find it here. So I'm gonna. Hopefully, you'll get a little. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest screenwriter in the world, anyway, either. But maybe you'll get a bit of it. Here's my opening of a script. Fade in. Interior, Orange County megachurch, noon. A sumptuous crystalline cathedral. Thousands of the faithful sit, waiting in breathless anticipation, underneath broken shafts of heavenly sunlight. The stage, fit for an arena rock band. Lighting grids, massive banks of speakers, manned camera positions all around to capture the show. A spotlight dramatically blasts from above. The opening theme music to Hallelujah House, played by the house band, pounds from the speakers. A single figure steps out upon the stage. Our host, world-famous televangelist Emil Zacharias, tall, slender, bespoke, a pale-skinned smooth talker with an armor-piercing gaze. His radiant smile threatens to engulf his entire face in a single gulp. Prancing to the front of the stage, Zacharias raises his outstretched arms to embrace the adoring crowd. Thunderous applause. The cameras catch every angle. The consummate showman, Zacharias, dramatically puts his palms up, silencing the room. Breathing deeply, Zach sucks half the air out of the auditorium. Zacharias says, "There is a godless evil in the world today. It favors no color, creed, or gender." The crowd leans forward enraptured. "It twists the souls of our children into seething cauldrons of hatred. That evil is Satan himself." The crowd roars approval as one of the church's cameras pushes in to an extreme close-up of Zacharias' face. There you go. That's the first page of the script I'm working on. Make of that what you will. But, yeah, so what can I say? But you know what? Keep writing, man. Don't stop. Although I wouldn't necessarily recommend writing a Star Wars script if you don't have the rights, because then what could you do with your script? You want to be able to sell it at the end of the day. So let's see. Who's next on the letter docket? Marco Lanny. Marco Lanny writes in. "Hi, Rob. I sit here writing my first letter to you while giving 2001 another chance at my attention. It's this film's fault I can never hear the name Dave again without hearing how. What I will say is the first scene in space while the Blue Danube is playing hits me in a good way. This will become more apparent further on. For me, films accentuate music and music accentuates film. Example, a song I heard in a film that I like would not have been the case had I not heard it in said film. I first became aware of you when you appeared on Collider, and I have to admit, I thought, who the fuck is this guy? I feel that all the time, sir. So, Marco, you're not alone. It takes me a while to welcome in newcomers. I slowly started to grasp, oh, so this is who that guy is. And I've been here ever since. The date is the 7th of November 2014, and I was in the cinema, and I would never have dreamed that the film I was about to watch, and of what I knew very little, would not only become my favorite movie of all time, but would set me on a path I dared to tread ever since I was a kid. And in fact, it was a film I fell asleep through. This film is Interstellar. I've always been into music. It fills me with a passion like nothing else. I've always felt I have a talent for it, but like all good procrastinators, I did nothing about it. Well, that was until I experienced Interstellar. Granted, it took a few years of watching and listening to Hans Zimmer's score, and it finally grew on me to the point where I took the plunge and bought a piano. Ooh, and never looked back. It's odd I don't really see this film as science fiction. That part of it is secondary to the story of a father leaving his kids for a bigger purpose. I don't think there's a harder decision to make in life. That's why Steven Spielberg now says he could never make Close Encounters today, because it's about a father who leaves his family. This is one of those films that hurts to watch because Murph feels abandoned. Her dad doesn't know if he'll ever see her again, and all the while they're going through life without him there. Them growing up while he stays the same is somehow very haunting, as it shows one thing we can't get back is time. The film hits me hard, and I think it's because of the relationship I have with my parents. It's very strained, and like most Italian families, but unconditional love is there, and this film makes me think of them, and the realization I will lose them one day, which, no matter how I think I can mentally prepare for it, it will hit me like a train. The scene where he sees his daughter at the end is the hardest to watch. Anyway, come over to London for a meetup where we will drink, share stories, and hopefully end the night with a dirty... What's a dirty dunner? Is that a dirty downer? I don't know. But I want to thank you for writing that in. That is a great letter. Marco, I think music, one of the great things, obviously before there was even sound in movies, a lot of the time you had an organist who was playing live music to picture. And as a matter of fact, I didn't know this. I was watching a documentary a couple weeks back about Miles Davis, The Birth of the Cool. And I did not know that Miles Davis and his, I don't know if it was his trio, they were doing the music score for Elevator to the Gallows, which is a movie I highly recommend seeing. Elevator to the Gallows. And they recorded that soundtrack live for the film. I'm obsessed with this idea. I want to make a movie where, I mean, obviously I'd want Herbie Hancock to do this or somebody like that, but by the way, how cool is it that Round Midnight is coming out on Blu-ray from Criterion, one of my favorite. If you like jazz or you have any, you gotta watch Round Midnight. It's so good. Herbie Hancock does the score. There's there's a lot of jazz classics in there. It's so good. But that's an aside. But I'm obsessed now since I watched Birth of the Cool. I mean, I own Elevator to the Gallows. It's Criterion put it out. I didn't know that Miles Davis, they played the music live to picture. You know, normally a composer will sit down and write the music, and then you come in and you have various recording sessions, and I'm sure that's what they did, but they were actually playing live to picture and was recording it, but they were like improvising. It's jazz, man. And I'm like, that would be so cool to have like a jazz trio or something come in and score your movie with an improv jazz score. I mean, I don't know if I could ever do something like that, but I want to. Music is so important. Music was around for film before even dialogue was around for film. So look, I love music too. And I don't know how far you got with the piano. I hope you stuck with it. But I do love the score for Interstellar. And you know, there's another great score for another movie it's not exactly like Interstellar, but the score for Danny Boyle's Sunshine. If you haven't seen Sunshine, that is a score. Well, Marco, I'm going to hit you up next time I come to London. So, and you can take that to the bank. Omar 94 says, hi, Rob, moderators and Post-Geek Singularity. When it comes to certain people when viewing entertainment now, there's a trend of entertainment being considered completely flawless or it's considered bad. John Campia says it all the time on his show, where he describes things either being a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 or 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't know why it's hard for those people to find fault in entertainment, even if it's good. In my case, there are movies and TV shows I like, but admit they have problems, though I still like them overall. I like the TV show Full House, but even I can accept problems with it because even though I like it, it's straight up corny as hell. I think I already read this, didn't I? I like The Princess Bride, but I don't like how visually it looks since it looks bland and uninteresting. But still, I like the movie. Like most MCU movies, I like most MCU movies. Not all, since there are those which I find either just okay or not that good, but I will admit when the MCU movies I like have problems, since they're pretty generic and predictable, as well as sometimes having forced comedy. I'm not sure why certain people take issue with not accepting problems in entertainment, but I can still like entertainment even when I know there are problems with it. Thanks and live long and prosper, Omar. Well, we were talking about this today on John's show. You know, I think that when you like something, a lot of your identity is wrapped up in what you like. And so now, like, I never thought when I was growing up, when I would go to science fiction conventions or something, science fiction fans we would get into these long arguments, like, what's your favorite episode of this, or what's your favorite episode of that, or this show sucks and that show. But we were able to have cogent debate where you wouldn't be like, yeah, fuck you. No, we would actually have points to make. Like nowadays, like my vehement hatred of Star Trek Discovery is on record, but I could sit here and pontificate. You might not agree with me. Pontificate about why I don't like it. I'm not going to attack you for liking it. I'm going to tell you why I don't like it, and hopefully I will back it up with evidence to support my assertions. But I'm never going to tell you, yeah, you suck, you shouldn't like that, fuck you. I would never do that because people like different things. We come from different backgrounds, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I find so disconcerting now is, especially amongst Star Trek Discovery fans, if I express my discontent or dislike of modern Star Trek on social media, people attack me personally. And I'm like, that's fine. You can do that. But, you know, if you're going to attack somebody for their opinions about art or whatever, you're never going to win. There's no argument to be won. You're not going to change my opinion if I don't like something, just like I'm not going to change your opinion. However, I always think that it's interesting to have debates about why you like something. What is it about this show that you like? And I think what's unfortunate, I guess, is because I've been reading film criticism my whole life. I've been thinking about why. I've always thought about, why do I like something? Why do you like something? Tell me why you like something so I can learn from you what it is about whatever the thing is in question that you like, so I can understand things and it'll help me make better stuff in the future. So, Calvin Bowes, our friend Calvin Bowes, the father of Braxton Bowes, writes in, says, Dear Rob, I would like to talk about how the audience expectations changed from Iron Man to the present within the MCU, particularly with the post-credits scene. When Iron Man came out, post-credits scenes were rare in movies. I happen to be one of the few who usually sits through the credits, and I had a friend who told me I should watch the post-credits scene. I was glad I did. It was my favorite part of the film, really. And as you know, most people left the theater as the credits rolled and did not see it. In fact, I remember a friend arguing with me that Samuel L. Jackson was not in the film, and he said he saw it 6 times. For several films, it was like this. Credits roll, audience leaves. But gradually, film by film, as the audience became more aware of the MCU's post-credit scenes, they would remain for the credits. I think it was by the film Thor: The Dark World that I noticed that people were not leaving. You tell me, Rob, were you one of the few people who saw the post-credits to Iron Man? And can you tell me what film you remember people first not leaving the theater? Today, people search online to see if there's a post-credit scene to any movie they're planning to go see. Well, Calvin, I have to tell you, I am a credit sitter. I stay and watch the credits, if for no other reason than to listen to the score or hear any more music. I mean, I can tell you, like even when we were doing Tango Shalom, there's 2 pieces of score. There's the beautiful music that takes us out into the end credits, and then Justine Laniato wrote a great song that also plays over the end credits that's original to Tango Shalom. So if you didn't sit through the entire end credits, you wouldn't hear the entire experience of the movie. So I was also saying this the other day on the John Campea show. The first time I ever started staying through the credits was after Animal House had come out in 78. And in one of the fate of one of the characters in Animal House, Babs Jansen, is that she ends up working for Universal Studios as a tour guide. And then at the end of certain Universal movies, I don't know if it was just John Landis movies or other movies. I think it was other movies. But if it used to say, there was a graphic that would come up that said, visit Universal Studios. And for a while, it would say, ask for Babs. Parenthetically would come up, which is a total reference to John Landis's movies. He's done a lot in his films. With like See You Next Tuesday or see you next Wednesday, not see you next Tuesday. See you next Wednesday. He would put that in his movies. My favorite in joke for any movie ever in the history of cinema. There's 2. One of them, and my favorite of all. Well, my second favorite's in Stakeout when they're playing like movie trivia, and Emilio Estevez asks Richard Dreyfuss, "Okay, what movie is this from?" "This was no boating accident." And Richard Dreyfuss says, "I don't know." But my favorite, in Animal House, the character of Niedermeyer, who's ROTC in Animal House, it shows at the end of the movie, it says Sergeant Niedermeyer killed in Vietnam by his own troops. That's all it said. In Twilight Zone, the movie, in the first segment with Vic Morrow, who was killed during the production of the movie. But in that, there's a scene in Vietnam where these troops are wading through the water, and out of nowhere, one guy goes, "I told you guys we shouldn't have shot Lieutenant Niedermeyer." I was the only person who laughed because I'd seen Animal House 100 times. But that's my favorite movie in joke. I know it's John Landis to John Landis, but still, it's one of my favorites. I'm loving it. So that was the first time, ask for Babs. The second time was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Go home. It's over. They did that in Deadpool. But I think, once people knew that there were end credit scenes in the MCU, so I don't remember the first time people didn't get up. Maybe it was Captain America. I don't know. I don't remember. But, now I've seen other movies, that have The Matrix Resurrections has a post-credit scene. So, yeah. Again, I want to thank everyone for writing in, which is great. So thank you for that. I think I got some more letters. I think so. This one, Joe from Montreal writes in and says, "As much as I enjoyed the last episode of the Book of Boba Fett, I couldn't help but think of one of your last Star Wars-related Robservations. Star Wars can't do anything really new. When things get boring or off the rails, just trot out The Mandalorian to get the fans back into Lucasfilm's good graces. I'm curious when we see Andor, and if they will actually tell a story that has no mention of anything Skywalker, Fett, or Mandalorian." Well, Joe, I think you're right. It's very disheartening. One of the things I've constantly gone off about the franchises that we see today, all of our venerable franchises that have been around for so long, they can't seem to break free and do anything new and interesting and, well, good. I've thought Star Trek has been dead since 2009 because they're not doing anything new and different. And when they are, they're half-assed. I mean, Star Trek Discovery is an amalgamation of different ideas that's thrown together in a souffle of gobbledygook for me, so I can't stand it. But the idea, I mean, here's what I don't get. the original Star Wars, when George Lucas was thinking about doing Star Wars, it's a combination of fantasy tropes and also samurai movies, Kurosawa's samurai films. So they had a basis. And of course, the battle scenes were from something like the Dam Busters. But now I feel that all of these franchises, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars or Doctor Who, they're only about themselves now. So it's always referencing the past. And then when they do try and do something new, they don't, like, one of the things about Last Jedi that I found so distracting was from the beginning when Poe Dameron's making colloquial jokes about, I'm going to call him on the phone and put him on hold or whatever. Show me something that is, like, Empire Strikes Back to me is the ultimate guide. You have Star Wars. So Star Wars is your franchise. The first, A New Hope's your franchise. So you have by the way, it's called A New Hope was later. But so when you have Star Wars, the original Star Wars, you're going to do a sequel like Empire. Empire extrapolated on the entire Star Wars universe and took us someplace we never went. It introduced Yoda the Jedi Master. It gave us Cloud City, and we met Lando Calrissian, and the idea of the Emperor, which we hadn't seen in Star Wars. He was alluded to, but we hadn't seen him. Bounty hunters, everything. Empire was a complete expansion of the Star Wars universe. And then when you get to Return of the Jedi, even that, you go back to Tatooine. Even though you met Jabba the Hutt, back to Tatooine. Well, why would you do that? Why does Jabba the Hutt live on Tatooine? I don't know. Why can't Jabba the Hutt live on a different kind of a planet? Because he's a giant slug. What if he lived in more of a tropical, more like how Kashyyyk looked? Like, why does he have to live back in Tatooine? And then we get a Death Star 2. Why? And one of the great disappointments of my life was seeing Jedi and seeing all this familiar stuff. Sure, you got the Tidarium shuttle and you got speeder bikes, and that's cool. But you don't get like the Hoth, the attack on Hoth with the snow speeders and the Imperial walkers. That was really interesting because we hadn't seen that before. A land battle in Star Wars. And ever since that, Jedi, I've always felt let down in some way, shape, or form by Star Wars, because it should have always extrapolated on and given us the new stuff, and it just isn't. Let's just go back and revisit. Like, we now have 2 shows, The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, that can't get off Tatooine. I understand it's easier to film, especially with the volume backgrounds they're using, which, by the way, I'm already tired of. In Moonfall, there's so many green screen backgrounds, environmental backgrounds. I'm like, enough already. I hate it. You could tell. And that's a big problem, I think, with The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. It works when you're in space environments or something. I get that. But when you're outside on Tatooine, I'm like, God, do I have to see one more? Can't you guys just get some sand and shoot with the real sun in the sky at some point? I mean, I know it's hard to do that, but anyway. So yeah. Let's see. This next one comes from Stefan Susi. Susi. Hello. In your last episode of Fully Articulated, you said that the army of 1/12 figures is bigger than the one for the 6 scales. Well, I'm sending you some backup for the 6 scale army. It's the monster. It's a 1/6 scale Mondo from the 1954 movie Creature from the Black Lagoon. Oh my God. I'm going to save this. These are awesome. Wow, look at this. Okay, I got to show this. You guys are, I'm telling you, you guys are, here's one of, these are great pictures. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, on Fully Articulated, we're showing pictures, 6 scale, there's a scale war being fought, and people are sending in pictures, and I'm going to take these pictures, as I'm gathering them, I'm putting them into, I'm like building a book, one of those, like a hardcover book. Look at this. This is awesome. Look at this picture. This is really cool. So here's a 6 scale Creature from the Black Lagoon. Again, this is, I don't know if it's Stephanie. It's Stephane. Stephanie. Susan. I love this. This is so great. So I'm sending you some backup for the 6-scale army. Well, Stephanie, I think it's Stephanie. This is awesome. I love these. There's many more, and I will be putting more characters up. And there's all kinds of things happening outside. Construction, I don't quite understand it all. Very odd. Scary. Anyway, I guess things are being thrown away that I don't quite understand, but okay. Anyway, let's get down and see what you guys are saying. Now, the first things I want to do is, this is very frustrating that I'm listening to people scream and yell and bang on my door. Anyway, we're going to start here with Anonymous. This is from a few days ago. And Anonymous writes in, sends in one of five, a 5-part question. Hi, Rob. I've held off writing to you for a while, but my patience can only go so far. My patience can only go so far. Earlier in this week on the John Campea Show, when discussing the Ana de Armas lawsuit, you laid out very well how the suit has virtually no ground to stand on, and how nonsensical and ridiculous it is. However, John turns right around and attempts to defend the suit and ludicrously compares the marketing for a film to an inanimate object in a camera lens. My question is, why is it that John enjoys to play devil's advocate on topics or issues that have nearly no merit to be categorized as a debate or controversy? I've watched John's show for the past few years, and I've recently questioned if John does this simply as a tactic to stir unnecessary debate. As an example, his claim about favorite movie versus best movie, which is too ridiculous to go even into right now. I mean, come on, saying film is subjective, but then saying my favorite movie is the best movie? Get fucking real, man. John has had a pattern of resorting to this tactic, and it has come across as cheap and superficial, but perhaps that's just me. But I just wanted to get your thoughts. Thanks, and keep up the great work. You're a goddamn inspiration, Rob. Well, Anonymous, first of all, thanks for supporting the channel. Appreciate that. You know, I think that, remember, we all also are trying to do an entertainment show. So sometimes, I mean, when we get into these kind of debates, I think some of the time John is just trying to put food for thought out there. So for those of you who don't know, John has often said that if some movie is your favorite movie, then it has to be the best movie. And I completely disagree with this. And I always use as an example, my favorite Star Trek movie is Star Trek the Motion Picture. But I don't think it's the best Star Trek movie. I think as a movie, I think Wrath of Khan is a better piece of entertainment. However, Star Trek the Motion Picture is my favorite movie, but I don't think it's the best movie. And I think it's you can say something is in fact not that something is the best, but it's not necessarily your favorite. A lot of the times, sometimes the best movie can be your favorite. Like I love Godfather 1 and 2. They're two of my favorite movies of all time. They're also two of the best movies I think ever made. So, but with Star Trek the Motion Picture is my favorite Star Trek movie, but Star Trek 2 is the best Star Trek movie. I think, but that's because I don't believe art is subjective. I think people's opinions of art are subjective, but I think art itself, there is an objectivity to it, especially because it's been transcending through time. And there's a lot of people that don't believe that, and I think that's where those debates come from. But yeah, I think that the comparing, I mean, I understand what John was saying. He was talking the difference between a camera. So John used this example. So for those of you who don't know, there was a group of people who wanted to have a class action lawsuit because Ana de Armas does not appear in the movie Yesterday, in the final cut, and she was in the trailer. However, if you buy the physical media, the deleted scene that she was in appears there. But they want to sue, or they want $50 million in damages. This is true, by the way. $50 million in damages because Ana de Armas, they're Ana de Armas fans, and the idea that they went and saw Yesterday, they didn't get Ana de Armas, and so they want to sue. My contention is that they're not going to see the Ana de Armas story. they're going to see yesterday, whether she's in the movie or not. Just because they're Ana de Armas fans, if you're an Ana de Armas fan, don't go see yesterday. She doesn't star in the movie. Go find, Blade Runner 2049. Do something like that. But it was just a ridiculous lawsuit. But John was he was trying to draw a line between, well, if you buy a camera, if you see a camera advertised with a camera, a body, and a lens, and it doesn't come with the lens, well, then that's false advertising. But I would say, but it's advertised as a camera and a lens. And the difference would probably be that in the picture of the camera, it showed that film was there, a roll of film that you could put in the camera, but it didn't say that in the actual ad. There's just a picture there that has a roll of film in the background, and someone could say, "Well, this didn't come with film, so I'm going to sue you." But the thing is, yesterday doesn't advertise itself. Ana de Armas is in fact in the trailer. It's true, she is. But the movie's not advertising Ana de Armas. It's advertising yesterday. So when you go see the movie and you want to see this Danny Boyle confection, which I enjoy, I wanted it to be a little bit better, but that's what you're getting. There's a lot of another anonymous, who's gone back and watched some of the Midnight Metals. Anonymous says, Midnight Metal 27, thank you, Rob and Dave. What a gift that episode was. Dave Scow is da bomb. Yo, he is da bomb. Known Dave for a long time. I met Dave because he wrote the first movie I worked on, which was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. It's Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 that I worked on the summer of 1989, and I met Dave Scow. Anonymous says, Midnight Metal 17, gratitude tip. Well, thank you, Anonymous. Anonymous goes on to say, Midnight Metal 19, absolutely amazing. Thank you for introducing me to Chaosium. Anonymous 23, Midnight Metal 23, that was the one with Eric. Loved the dirt. Thank you. And then Anonymous says, Midnight Metal 25, salud. I don't know what that was in. I don't know what was in. Anonymous episode tips in about Midnight Metal 29. Fascinating dude, Darren Scott. What a true professional. I love Darren Scott. Midnight Metal 32, kills it. What a badass she is. And you should go subscribe to her YouTube channel. Positive Fandom, right? It's Positive Fandom. And sends in a super chat. Also says, oh, she sent that yesterday. These are all from yesterday from, whatchamacallit? From Fully Articulated. So I'm going to jump past these. And we got some members. Jay Bling says, have you Googled whether lunar orbital misalignment can cause slot machines to hit jackpots? Jay Bling is referring to comments we made on the John Campea show today about Moonfall. Something Ray said. Let's hope. Let's hope so. 200 Watt Studio says it's banned in one school, not Tennessee. One school might as well be Tennessee. But you're right. I was just going by the headline. Maybe I was making more of it. 200 Watt Studio goes on to say, dumb school district in McMinn County, Tennessee. They're being roundly embarrassed internationally, focused on nudity and curse words, missing the point entirely. Yeah, but you know what? I'd have to say, 200 Watt Studio, there's too many people that think that way in this country. And one school district it's not, they're not the only one. So definitely it's something that needs to be considered. Absolutely needs to be considered. The real Moonfall sends in a tip and says, seeing that you did not care too much for Moonfall, you and Ray should have just walked up to the front of the theater, dropped your pants, and gave the audience a real Moonfall. At least the special effects would have been better or eye-shattering. Yeah, we would have been upset. We would have probably been thrown in jail, but what can you do? That's very funny. I like that idea. 200 Watt Studio goes on to say, I remember reading Mouse when I was a kid. It's heart-wrenching. In middle school, I was using curse words already, and I wasn't harming people. School Karens. Hiding the horror of what happened is 100% wrong. We need to be disgusted by the humiliation of millions of human beings. We need to have that in our minds so it never happens again. Do not pave over. I agree with that. Let's see. Eat some seaweed. Are you referring to Plankton, and Logan's run there. Israel is our greatest ally. Zionism is the way. I think Israel is a great, strong ally. It's a great democratic, pluralistic democratic government in the Middle East, one of the very few. And the people in Israel, I've been to Israel, and it's really funny. I was very impressed by just how multicultural Israel was, and I enjoyed it. Zionism is the way. Well, I'm a big Zionist, but I don't know necessarily. Israel's certainly not perfect, and there's a lot there that needs to be rectified, and certainly the Israelis are not without fault, but I do think that Israel represents a beacon in a part of the world that that part of the world's changing. I was very surprised. The UAE, I was listening to a lawyer talk about how they're really loosening up some of the restrictions they had to sort of bring it more in line with the rest of the world, and that was impressive. And I think, that should be encouraged. So we'll see. Hopefully things will mellow out in the Middle East. Joel Ralston sends in a super chat and says, I was required to read Elie Wiesel's Night. Oh, I did too. And also watch Schindler's List in high school. My wise teachers found ways to show us the truth. I agree. Totally agree. Chris Fakowski says, I oppose banning books, but removal from one's grade curriculum is not banning. Absence from the curriculum is not banning. Well, I mean, they're taking books that were in the curriculum out of the curriculum. And for what reason? I think that look, so call it suppression, call it what you will. I was reporting on the headline they used, but the thing is, to me, when you say it, that's true. The semantics of it are not banning removal of the curriculum, but why remove it from the curriculum? I mean, I don't understand this idea that we want to protect. What is this business about protecting children from the real world, with all the kinds of crazy stuff that goes on? But you're right. I think those semantics are important. But you're right. 200 Watt Studio goes on to say, Fritz Lang, Metropolis, The Big Heat, M, Woman in the Window, House by the River. I like Hangman Also Die. I haven't seen that in a while. Those are good. That's a good list. Joshua Elias, is it Note? Joshua Elias Note. Big respect, Mr. Burnett, when you come to London for for a doner. Okay. When you come to London for a doner, it's a kebab you generally eat after a night out in the UK. It's almost a rule. We have doner kebabs. I thought it was a drink. Grab the train up to York. You could do a talk in the city. Yeah, in a beer garden. I'd love to do that. I love the UK. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke are here. Hi, Rob. Elevator to the Gallows and Miles' score is brilliant. One of my favorite scores is Batman Begins, along with Interstellar. Live long and prosper, the Yerkman and lovely Laurel, the most romantic couple. Yeah, so, when they score movies, usually, like John Williams will write a score, and he'll write it, and then they record it to picture. But it's written, and then it's recorded to picture. So it is actually played over picture, but it's usually written. It's already scored. And the difference between what they did with Elevator to the Gallows is you had jazz musicians improvising to picture while it played. I mean, and trying to get the emotion of the characters, which I thought was just, so it's different. They didn't come in with a bunch of sheet music that was written. It was improv, which I think is just so cool. So cool. Rob Haryet became a member. A spectator became a member. Zephyr Chan re-upped. Chief Damac, Doc Savage, Paula Crabtree, Roy Kirk, S. Almighty, Sandy Q, Cabela. I'll remember, we are having, for those of you who don't know, if you're not a member of the channel, you can become a member of the channel for $1 a month. We have member calls where if you're a member of the channel, we get together and just chat for a couple hours, usually on Saturdays, and we just chat. And you can ask me questions and talk to other members. It's a lot of fun. Really dig it. Paul from Twin Flick said, going back to the letter about stingers, or what's more commonly known as the post-credits scene, I started staying till the end of credits after Airplane with that great little gag with the guy still waiting in the taxi for Robert Hayes to come back. Man, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. That's a good one. G4 BoobTube sends in a tip and says, what's the story with why you are back on the Campiest show now? You had quit because of the drive, while also not doing any more companion videos for some reason, but now you're back. How did that come about, and how are you now able to do the drive? Well, to be fair, I was busy. I was doing other things, so that the drive time was difficult for me, and so that was part of it. 2, I didn't realize that the drive was shorter than I thought. It only takes me 45 minutes to get there, and I'm going against traffic. So, and then also John made me an offer to come back with various forms of compensation that was too juicy to pass up. And so I decided to take it. And I have to say, I thought the show was getting stale. And I think that John's having us in the studio, I have to say I've never had as much fun doing the show as I'm having with the 4 of us in a room, because we've had other people. John and I, before the pandemic, we always did the show together. We did not do it remotely. We occasionally, but it's just a lot of fun to do it now. I'm having a really good time doing it, and we've got stuff percolating that go beyond the show. That's interesting. So I like doing it. I'm having fun. Darth Plato says, that's like saying your favorite baseball player is the best baseball player. That doesn't follow. For example, my favorite drummer is Louis Bellson, but I think the greatest of all time is Buddy Rich. Rich was a jazz guy, and that's not my thing. That's a good example. I like that, Darth Plato. I think that's really good. I can't argue with that. And let's see, on that note, everybody, I'm going to bring this chat to a finale. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank people for supporting the channel via super chats and tips and memberships and all that. Thank you. A lot of people are quoting Airplane. I picked a bad day to start sniffing glue. Love that. I want to thank Louise X Sparrow for being here. My fellow Trek compatriot Justin Toner was here. So it's good to see you. Lord Toth is here. Thank you, Lord Toth. Greg Smith is here. I want to thank all of you. And Tom Jr. Jackson's here. So anyway, thank you all for that. And I will be back. There will be a Robservations tomorrow. We have a membership call on Saturday. I'm going to be dropping, right when I finish now, I'm going to be finishing up the conversation that I had with Paul Tazewell, the costume designer for Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which will be dropping this today or tomorrow. So check that out on the Designing Hollywood podcast. And we got some really cool Designing Hollywood podcast stuff coming up. And on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.